I am LaToya Ruby Frazier, and I'm an artist and a photographer. In 2013, I began chartering helicopters, making aerial views. People don't get an opportunity to see a bird's eye view of what actually surrounds them. I received a phone call from the Atlantic, and we were discussing sites of protest, what those sites look like today, where African Americans lived that had their uprising when Martin Luther King Jr. was killed in '68. Specifically picking these three places is also a way of me commemorating some of the most significant aspects of how his organizing began and which communities really were supportive of him. And these images are so much about the shadow and the history and the spirit of how King was there. It's like capturing the spirit of King in these landscapes. The texture, the streets, how those people walk past those spaces, or the architecture or the building itself, right? That's you like putting your body in the center of all of that. If you are doing that, you do start to get a sense or a feeling about the history and how that history is written on that landscape and the body of its inhabitants. Chicago becomes very important for me. The West Side is where Martin Luther King Jr. was residing himself. His actual house he stayed in has been converted and turned into a housing complex named after him, and still a predominantly African American community. So it's important to see that. In Baltimore, I think that had King been alive today, and he was watching the news like the rest of us, or was called to action to come to Baltimore in support of Freddie Gray and the residents that live in the Gilmore Homes public housing, I think that this definitely would have been a site where we might have seen some organizing and King giving a speech. I flew over Gilmore Homes in Baltimore. It became very clear to me how Freddie Gray lived in an environment that is toxic. It just looks like a target from the air. And I see these photographs in service to helping people who live in cities like Baltimore and Chicago and Memphis see themselves, orient themselves, and see what is actually surrounding their homes and their communities.